go.
Okay, we're already on.
Awesome. Okay. Welcome to Mythical Monster Investigation. And we're going for episode 10, part 4 of our investigation of dragons. We're going to be looking at African dragons and then dragons of the Middle East. And this will be our last look at dragons because,
Holy
wow,
crap.
this has been a long one.
We didn't even go into detail, and it's tiring.
No, there are far more details to go into dragons and far more details with monsters. And again, if you want more details on dragons and other monsters, feel free to look up the book Probable, Possible, Plausible, an explanatory guide to monsters. And
Links in the description as always. And thank you, Alchemist, for saving the one that have the most images on Google and DuckDuckGo of all types of, because Chinese dragon, Western dragon, move the hell over. African dragons got you beat. They have just plenty of images. All 2 of them. And it's not even the 2 that get repeated often. It's just 2. And then Google say good luck. But you know what? I managed to find a picture that sums up all those various crazy African dragons you're about to mention. I finally found an image that had all of them in it.
Okay. Little terrified, but I'm ready.
I'm worried now.
Okay. I'm just gonna show it because god dang it, I was surprised I could find this. But I found it, damn it! I found the image. It sums up. This is the image for all African dragons right here. Definitive. Done.
That is brilliant.
Don't even tell the people on Spotify. They'll know it.
I appreciate the build-up. Wow. Okay. That is the perfect image for this.
I want anyone listening to the podcast to not know what this image is and just be like, what the hell is it? It sounds amazing.
It is amazing.
It really is. That's the funny part.
That's going to be up like the whole time now.
That's fine.
I'm fine with that. Okay. You know, we could almost end the podcast there. It would be perfect.
I mean,
it really would.
But we're going to trudge on with this because we went through the trouble of finding these stupid images, which is harder than most people think. We're going to bloody use them. Okay, so where was I? Oh, okay. So yes, this is going to be our final segment on dragons, and we're going to start off with dragons of Africa. And then, once we do that, we're going to go backwards and look at the possible origins of dragons altogether. Now, we're going to be doing this a little bit different. Normally, I just save off and give legends of dragons willy-nilly. There's no real order to them. I just say the monster. But in this case, I'm actually going to try to go in chronological order and locational-ish order. Because there's actually a migration pattern that can be seen when it comes to myths about African dragons. And it's going to kind of give us a look into a possible origin of the dragon, which makes sense at the end of the video. Hopefully, or else everybody will just be vastly confused. But we'll see. Let's see. So, one thing to note about African dragons is that, unfortunately, Africa is not big on writing things down at all. Most of their legends and myths were passed down orally. So, because of that, a lot of them change. We get multiple names for multiple creatures that are exactly the same. And because of that, there are also tweaks to their myths depending on the culture, the region, and whatever tribe they're warring with at the time. But we are going to kind of hone in on the ones that are repeated the most to get a kind of sense of almost an evolution of dragon mythology. And to start out, we're going to start off with one that was found primarily in southern parts of Africa and that is called, I'm going to butcher all these names, but I'm going to try it, the Masanji. Now, the Masanji was known as the Healing Serpent. Um, and the most prominent story of the Masanji involved a chief and his 5 sons. Basically, the chief was a wise and chief. He got sick one day, and the only one who could heal him, because the witch doctor and everybody tried, the only one who could was Masanji, because they'd heard of this great serpent with healing powers. So the father sent his first son to him. And apparently, to summon the great serpent, you had to sing to it. And then, if the serpent liked your song, he'd come out. And he would heal or do whatever you wanted for him if he liked your song. So the first son went there. He sang. The serpent liked the song. He grabbed his healing potion. To be specific, the legend says he grabbed his healing herbs. And he came out. But as soon as the first son saw the great serpent, he was terrified and ran back home. This was repeated for the other 4 sons until the 5th son went there, and he was not afraid. So Masangi climbed onto his shoulders, and the boy brought the snake back to his village, which immediately everybody ran away. So whatever this thing looked like, apparently it was terrifying. And basically, the snake healed the father. The father was fine. The 5th son, of course, was his favorite. Can't imagine why. And Masangi stayed with them for a few days, then went back home, teaching them about healing, and that's it. Nice, happy ending. So we start. And this legend, now again, the dates on this are a little askew, again, because most of these were passed down orally. So, but the date appears to be around 200 to 500 AD is when this mythos started happening and being spread in portions of South Africa. And also where kind of the peoples started migrating there. So that's the first one. Now, to move on, you're going to see a theme with some of these later dragons. For instance, this next one called the Mukiti. Yeah, I think I'm pronouncing that right. Now, the Mukiti, like most of these, is a river serpent. And in his myth, a little more stringent, he fights a hero. But difference is, although he fights a hero for supremacy or whatever, he normally doesn't die in his myths. He can become human, and he's actually supposed to be respected. And dwelling in deep corridors, dwelling in rivers, like that. But he isn't seen as overall a villain. He often becomes just the antagonist, and later even turns maybe not friend, but bystander. So that is a small change. And again, around 200 to 500 AD, where we see this type of mythos, which not much to say about that. But then we move on to our next one, which is Myohen. Zed, how did you pronounce this?
Oh, now I need to see it written again.
Uh,
How did you have it written?
Monyohe?
Monyohe. That's how I pronounced it.
Okay, Monyohe. Yeah, so this is where things get a little weird. So this is also a deity.
This is where it get weird. Not the karaoke, not the karaoke song with the magic healing snake, or the river snake that I have to fight for some reason. No. It's this one that get weird. Okay, I'm ready. I'm strapped in.
Okay.
Let's hear it.
Okay, Shadow R Fox, you know damn well that things are gonna get weirder from here.
Oh yeah, I know how weird this one's about to get.
Okay. So on a side note, despite popular belief, snakes are actually deaf. They sense vibrations through their bodies. Singing does nothing to appease snakes. They could not care less about you singing. So don't sing to snakes and expect it to be a friend. Is my point.
I don't know. If they hear me singing, they get angry for some reason.
That's everything.
They hear the vibration and they're just like, I want to kill whoever making that noise right there. Just
It has nothing to do with you stepping on them and poking them with a stick.
I'll poke them until they come after me.
So moving on. Manyohe, whatever. Manyohe was a snake deity who had powers of invisibility and could turn into a human. Now, so these are kind of strange stories where the ones that have them the most have this strange theme because, like I said, there are many stories of this type of dragon-ish snake deity thing, and they go through different names and mythos and different stories. And this is one of the ones where it really kind of gets screwy because this has a common theme. His stories have common themes of bride-groom, where a woman is going to marry a serpent. Now, how this happens is odd. Sometimes my homemake can turn into a human, and then she's surprised to find out that her human is actually a snake deity. Or he remains a snake deity, and she's into that. Another one is that she kills him. He basically is picked up by his mother and put in the river, and he then becomes human, and he marries her. It honestly goes all over the place. And these were common for the Sotho people, the Zana people, and even the Zulu people. And this myth comes usually around 500 AD. And well, it should be mentioned that the most common snake around are the African rock pythons, which are very large snakes. So you can see how snakes can be seen as kind of this semblance of power just based on that. But to be fair, as we're going to see later, there are a lot weirder creatures in Africa. So we'll save that till a bit later. But one thing that should be noticed is that there's this theme of basically snakes having the power to, and you also notice that they're not necessarily evil. So this might have a real world comparison to it, and that is a disease called ichthyosis. Now, ichthyosis is a skin disease which makes which is a drying of the skin that can make it appear, well, scaly. And the people who have this disease can look very serpent-like. Their skin can break out. It's very interesting. In fact, at one time, they were actually some, for lack of a better word, carnival freak shows as snake, which, carnival freak shows. All right, to be fair, carnival freak shows definitely exploited. There's no doubt about it. But a lot of them weren't paid that bad. And, it gave them a job in times when people wouldn't even look twice at them and would call them monsters. I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying that times sucked back then. That's my overall point. And, people are cruel. I mean, even today, people won't understand this. So who are we kidding? But yeah, so that's the thing. So perhaps, just maybe, some of these themes of snakes becoming humans might have come from people with this skin disease, which I'm told is not uncommon in Africa. So you can kind of see how they could make the leap from one to another, right? I mean, that makes sense, don't you think, guys?
Yeah, kind of. Because I've seen a lot of. I'm not gonna try to pronounce it. I'm just gonna call it scaly skin. Um, not to as bad a degree as the image, but I've seen cases where it looks scaly, but to the touch, it's regular skin. But I believe with how do you say it?
You said ichthyosis.
Ichthyosis. I believe with ichthyosis is also scaly to the touch, if I'm not mistaken.
It can vary depending on degree.
Because I've seen people who had it where it wasn't scaly to the touch, but it looked scaly from a distance.
Yeah.
But
Like
usually they
most.
just get in just small segments of their body.
Yeah, no, this is like, extreme cases. It depends. Like things like this can come bad or can be worse than it is. Some people get mild cases, some people get extremely bad cases. So it always depends. And obviously, this is one of the worst cases. But like, you could see how the myth kind of connects about these people kind of being seen as snake-like. Because, like with the first story about Masangi, if you take Healing Serpent and go instead have a man who's hard of healing, who can heal people, is a witch doctor or something, and he has this, which you've seen some of the pictures while we were looking at images of this. You can see how people who are less kind essentially run away in fear.
Yeah. Also, you're cutting in and out a little bit there. I don't know if you're
Oh.
moving from your mic by accident.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, let me try again. From our first story about Masangi, if you imagined him instead as a healing person with this kind of skin irritation, you could kind of see how people could run away from him in fear.
Yeah.
Especially if they're less sensitive than other people.
I'm just thinking of all the stories that came after with the guy marrying with the woman marrying either a serpent or a human who took the form of a serpent who took the form of a human or something in between, and how there's a lot of other stories where things like that happen, because Japan got plenty of yokai stories where the yokai take the form of a human and the marry the other party, and they don't ever realize it till like the end of the story or something like that.
Oh yeah, no, Japan has plenty of those, and Africa, as it turns out, has them too. I mean, Japan also has a story about a dragon marrying a woman, though, to be fair, in Japan's cases, as we discussed last time, that was more about the legitimacy of power of a noble family than anything else.
Or I'm
Now, to be
thinking
fair,
exclusively with serpents rather than dragons.
true. To be fair, this might be more akin to a Beauty and the Beast story, which the Beauty and the Beast story, believe it or not, was based off a real person who had that disease where hair grows all over your body. I forget what it's called. Hyper something.
Yeah.
But, he was born with this disease, and he was eventually, how can I put this nicely?
Shaved?
No, he was never shaved. No. In France, when they still had a king, the royal court adopted him as a attraction.
Oh, he was a sight,
to...
so. He was Connie. Okay, just say Connie, Alchemist. It's not that bad.
I was trying to be kind. And, basically, Beauty and the Beast came that they thought it'd be funny to marry this person off to a noble woman.
Oh, okay.
That's that's the original story of Beauty and the Beast.
So it was the equivalent of a high school romance where the popular girls double dare one of the other popular girls to date a nerd or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, no, that's a good way of describing it, because
you could just say high school girls, and I would have been like, I know exactly what you're talking about. Okay, makes sense.
Now, to be fair, the marriage was forced because he was getting older and they wanted more oddity. Apparently, his bride did like it because she seemed quite happy, and they had quite a few children.
And that's how
the ones that actually, the ones who actually had the hair growth gene, the court kept. The others were sent off to be somewhere else.
Somewhere else. Go to the salt mine. You don't have enough hair to be around here. We're us nobles. Get to the salt mine, you peasant.
Shadow R. Fox, I'm only going to say this. It's France.
Yeah.
In the time of French kings, are you really that surprised?
Like you're okay, frontline infantry. There's your position. I'm only 5.
Yeah.
Yep, too bad. Frontline infantry.
Yeah, but for reference, that is the actual true story of Beauty and the Beast.
I like that. I like that story better. Disney, do that. That's a remake you should do. If you get Emma Watson to do that, I will actually watch that one. Even if she's flat, that's gonna be entertaining as hell to watch.
I mean, clearly she wanted him to grow a beard, so clearly she's into it. I'm just saying. Okay, moving on from that. So, yeah, that's the theme we see, and again, appearing around 500 AD. So the next, sorry, the next monster we go to, or the next dragon, is called the Nikki Nanka. Now, again, like all of these, it was orally told, and because of that, the description widely varies. Most agree that it is some form of large reptilian creature. Most agree that it is very dangerous. Now, Nikki Nanka's main story is basically a warning of an omen of death. Basically, they said that children who disobey their parents and go to the swamp will get eaten by this creature.
Well, I mean, that's just good advice in general in Africa. Don't go to the swamp. Something's gonna eat you. Maybe the Nikki Naka, maybe a crocodile, maybe a hippo. I mean, that's why the game Hungry Hungry Hippo exists, okay? Just be careful.
Yes, for anybody who thinks hippos are cute, hippos are not
no,
cute.
they kill more people. They are the #1 killer in Africa. Bar none.
They are. They will kill crocodiles.
They do not F around. The Hungry Hungry Hippo, that's not a game. That was a legend. And we turned it into a game.
Yes, we turned something terrifying into a children's game, which we probably shouldn't have, because hippos are terrifying.
I'm just going to throw this out there. Universal, Legendary, whoever. Hungry Hungry Hippo. That's the next game you need to turn into a movie right there. Not Battleship, Hungry Hungry Hippo. I will watch a movie, a horror film movie where it's just hippos killing people.
I'm sure that'll go over well. Anyway, so, like I said, Miknaki was an omen of death. Now, funny thing, there was a legend that it could kill you just with a glance. So if you look upon it, it could kill you. And the only thing capable of beating Ninki Nanki was its shadow. Okay, so I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really know what to make of that. Any theories?
It's Shadow.
Yeah. Apparently, if it sees its shadow, it will be defeated.
I guess it was show.
So I guess it could have technically been a crocodile. I mean, I imagine those have a hard time seeing their shadow, though I'm not gonna lie, I've never thought about it.
I was trying to think of a way to work in. It saw its shadow, all fox, and that's what killed it.
Of course
Really?
you were.
I mean, look, I think I could take it.
You have fun
Anyway.
with that.
So, crocodile, maybe. Who knows? However, the legend was first started by, well, the earliest we could trace back of the legend was actually by Hanno the Hanno the Carthaginian, who recorded the tale by the Jola people in Gambia around 470 BC. So, yeah. Again, the problem with these things and trying to relate them to real creatures is that they were always passed orally. And when they were passed on, there was a big show made about this. Usually one person enacted it, and then he danced around telling the tale, telling parts. So, however he could make it more entertaining, often ended up in the story, which is why we get this pollution of, whatever's popular at the moment. Hence the various slightly similar but not similar legends, and basically the same monster having like 4 or 5 different names.
Like I said,
I mean,
best image of all the African dragons is just below.
Yeah, that fits. anybody listening to this on Spotify is so annoyed. They're going, "What is that image?
The greatest
Must be
image.
amazing." And yes, it is. Like Shadow R Fox, I tip my hat to you. That is an amazing image.
I'm just gonna say to anybody who's like, that's not the right dragon, I'm gonna say refer to the image below.
So true. So very bloody true. So next we're going to look at Damballa. Now, Damballa is supposed to be one of the most important deities in African mythology. He's the Sky Father, he's the creator, or the first thing created. The myths kind of vary. His skin shedding is what created life. His body moving through the earth is what created canyons. He said not to speak. He said to be very patient and very calm, very peaceful. He's also said to be able to whistle. I don't know why, but yeah, whistling. And again, one of the earliest dates you can find of this approximation is about 100 BC, and this comes primarily from West Africa. And it appears to be one of the bases of the more famous dragon that most people in Africa know or who study African culture know, Aida Wedo. Now, Aida Wedo is what we primarily think of. It is the rainbow serpent, which most people who've studied African dragons or African monsters have heard of the rainbow serpent. It is a powerful Iowa spirit in Haitian voodoo because most of Haitian voodoo and their mythos comes from Africa when it was brought over. The rainbow serpent later on becomes female, and it's the other half or the female half of the legend of Damballa because they need a male and a female to have it in Africa. And basically, Iowas, these two particular, the rainbow serpent, they are just the gods of everything. Every single thing important: fire, water, rain, agriculture, everything. These are the gods that are the most important about it. Again, about 100 BC, founded by the Fon people of Beni, who were in West Africa and start to expand out and, well, move out. So that's where we really get it. And okay, I don't normally do this, but this is one of the legends I want to talk about just because it shows how weird some of these African creation story myths go without being overly, what's the word I'm looking for? Perverse, I think is the word I'm going to use. So, for this one, in the beginning, there was a vast serpent whose body formed 7,000 coils beneath the earth, protecting it from descent into the abysmal sea. The titanic snake began to move and heave its massive form from the earth to envelop the sky. It scattered stars in the firmament and wound its taut flesh down the mountains to create riverbeds. It shot thunderbolts to the earth to create sacred thunderstorms. From its deepest core, it released the sacred waters to fill the earth with life. As the first rains fell, a rainbow encompassed the sky, and Damballa took her, Aidawedo, as his wife. The spiritual nectar that they created reproduced through all men and women as milk and semen. The serpent and the rainbow taught humankind the links between blood and life, between menstruation and birth, and the ultimate voodoo sacrament of blood sacrifice. So, yeah. Anyone who studies some of the more colorful African creation myths will notice that they were a little bit obsessed with bodily fluids, even more so than the Greeks. Comment?
I mean, that's the censored version. I need to hear the uncensored version. So I
Do you really need to hear the uncensored version?
Kind of, yeah. Actually, yes, a little bit, just because I know however tame you were making that, the
Okay, okay,
the
let's do this. Okay,
okay.
because I know I'm not going to get anywhere in this conversation by vote. Zed, do you need to hear the uncensored version of this?
Oh,
Uh, I,
that
I'm
sounds. Oh, okay. Dang it.
I I'm good.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so 2 nays, 1 aye. Sorry, Shadow R Fox, democracy wins out. You're going to
Okay.
go look it up, aren't you?
I think you seem to forget he's the one in charge of the slideshow. Democracy does not mean anything here.
I know, but I don't want. But do you really want to listen to me just talk about the?
No.
Exactly. So let's move on.
Okay.
But like I said, 100 BC. Well, do you know the story? If you want to tell
No, I'll look it up my own time.
it.
I probably have heard it. Something tell me I have probably heard it.
I mean, you probably have. Like, despite being obsessed with bodily fluids, it's not actually that interesting of a. I mean, no offense to African cultures out there. It's just it is rather generic as far as a creation stuff goes. And now since I've probably pissed off most of Africa, uh, that leads us to our next monster, or next dragon-ish, the Groot slang, which is the only one that I could actually pronounce. I'm probably still saying it wrong. And I'm told this is from a cartoon show for those of us watching on YouTube.
Secret Saturdays, for those who haven't seen it. Good little show. Kind of like Ben 10 before Ben 10 a little bit.
Ah, nice.
Wait, what are you talking about before? It was after.
Or was it after? Was it? Wait, was it after?
No, I will find it. Hang on.
Yeah, look that up, Zed, because I thought because I remember watching Secret Saturdays
Okay,
when I was-
are you talking about the original Ben 10?
Yes.
Okay. That premiered at the end of 2005. And the Secret Saturdays premiered towards the end of 2008.
Oh, okay.
I do know what Ben 10 is. I do not know.
And I'll try to get image of Secret Saturdays up there while I have.
Go ahead. And did you lot find something for this in Pokemon or no?
Oh, just this one. Zed, I would defer to you.
What one with insert any elephant? I can't add the serpent to the elephant.
Are there a lot of elephants in Pokemon?
Not actually.
There's Donphan
Oh,
Paparaja,
actually,
which
you
is
know
a
what?
metal elephant,
You know
and then
what?
there's the two past and future versions.
Dunfan is kind of like this. I would say Dunfan.
Yeah, Donphan's the closest.
Oh, what's the past version?
Great Tusk.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I remember seeing a promo for that show. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, I do remember that. I saw a commercial. I never watched it, but yeah, I remember the commercial now.
It was a fun little show.
No, it looked fun. No, that was when shows actually produced more fun stuff instead of being overly lazy like they are today.
Yeah.
Huh. Oh, anyway, okay, so Groot slang. Well, if you look up Groot slang on Google search, you know, as we found out, it's one of the few things you'll actually get when trying to look up African dragon. Is you often find this elephant-sized snake hybrid monster, which is accurate, but it could also just be said to be a serpent who could devour elephants, or the size of an elephant. So again, it goes off in variations, but this one seems pretty restricted in its variations, as mostly it's just a debate on this one thing. Either it's the size of an elephant that it can eat elephants, or it's a bizarre snake elephant hybrid. Which I guess considering an elephant's trunk, you could kind of see something from that, but it is a bit odd. Groot slang is where we start to take a divergence from from snake deities being basically good guys or spirits of goodness or healing or anything like that. It's not much of a take, but it is a small departure from it, as this one was said to dwell in a cave, often the bottomless pit, which I'm told you can actually still visit to this day. And in the cave, he was supposed to protect great treasures around the Richerscheveld River. But yeah, no, he protected treasures around that river. It was incredibly impressive, apparently. It's even said that his eyes were diamonds, though most people disagree with that. Believe it or not, this was actually mentioned, the legend, by Dutch explorers, even claiming to have seen it. Now, most of the Dutch explorers thought that it was just a big snake, but some Dutch explorers said they actually did see a creature that they could not readily identify. Now, the earliest we could date this back to, again, being overly generous with dating, is probably about 1000 BC. And when it comes to creatures like this, you're probably wondering about it. Well, Africa's got some very strange creatures, and this isn't the only one. To understand something about it, I'd like to mention possibly one of the most famous cryptid monster looks in Africa, Mokele Mbembe, which I think I butchered, but there have been a lot of reality TV shows where people have gone looking for this creature. And it's basically, according to myth and talking to African people who claim they've seen it, it's supposed to look like a sauropod dinosaur, which I admit is odd, considering that most of the tribes they talk to probably wouldn't know what a sauropod dinosaur is. So when they describe it, it is odd. But to be fair, there are people who suggest that it could theoretically have been an elephant going through the river with its trunk out, which is not an impossible explanation, but who knows? No one's ever found a really good answer for what exactly Africans are seeing when they claim to see this. Because there are still discoveries being made in Africa. Africa's got some amazing wildlife and things that we're only recently finding. A very recent find, for instance, is the elephant fish. And like its name suggests, it is a fish with a trunk, which was only discovered, I think, in early 2000s. Maybe that's later than it was actually discovered, but it was very recent. So creatures are still being discovered in Africa to this day. And some of the creatures are less than friendly looking.
Elephant fish,
For,
not so recent. That I think that was 1831.
oh, it was 1831.
It was So there's like multiple times. It depends which version of it you're referring to.
Ah, got it. Okay.
I think
Well, I
one is
guess
we gotta see 1919, and different time for different species, I guess.
yeah, maybe the other ones were ones that could never properly confirm it. I don't know. I'm guessing. My point is that's a weird looking fish. And some fish in Africa are terrifying looking, like the Goliath tigerfish, which is a massive fish with very sharp teeth that, honestly, the best way to describe it is if anyone ever saw the remake of Piranha, the mutant piranha fish that eat everybody in the lake, that's pretty much what it looks like. It is a terrifyingly big fish. I don't know if it's dangerous, but I'm not going to lie, I will find out. You guys?
It literally looked like the stuff of nightmares.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to describe it. So Africa has got some weird creatures, and remember, Africa is not the city, so not everything is lit all the time. In the dark, you could see how some monsters could get made up, but again, that's not necessarily saying that they're not seeing something. But fact is, a lot of Africa is not completely explored. We are still finding new creatures, so it's hard to say. But from that, we're going to move on to our next monster, which these started around 1000. The legends we could trace back are around 1000 BC, which is called Kiramu. Kiramu, yeah, that's it. And I like to think of the Kiramu as basically the African Hydra. Again, it's an oral tale told mostly from the Congo by the Nyanga people, which is another member of the Bante people during their expansion as they go down towards Africa, towards South Africa. And it is particularly known in the Mwindu epic. Now, I'm not going to lie, this one is odd. It's supposed to be a large animal with a black hide, teeth like a dog, a huge belly, the tail of an eagle, and 7 horned heads. And it's also said to have made a blood pact with the lightning god of this particular of the Moindo epic. So I don't know. Make of that what you will. Because again, the problem is there are like in this Moindo epic there are 3 or 4 different versions of this same epic, and it's meant to be a big theatrical show told by one single person, an orator who acts out the parts, dances it. So they add in things for entertainment because that's what it's meant to be. Which, while entertainment is great, it pollutes the story and the original mythos. Which Hollywood is a good example of that. Just going over our last videos, you can see how Hollywood's influence very recently has polluted some of our own mythos when it comes to vampires, werewolves, and other creatures. So with African monsters, there's not much of it. With pollution from entertainment kind of destroying historical fact, which is fun. And I honestly, based on what this thing became, the 7 horned heads, the teeth like a dog, and huge belly, tail of an eagle, I'm not really sure what this could be. You guys have an idea? For all we know, maybe an ostrich. Or a bunch of ostriches together. What do you think? 7 ostriches together?
I think I've seen this before.
You have?
So, taxidermy. I think someone took a chicken, stuffed it, took a bunch of chickens, stuffed them to make them look bigger, cut off all the heads, and then replaced them with snakes.
I don't even know how to respond to this.
And there you go. That's how the Kiramu was invented. Just like
By
the
taxidermy
yes,
in Africa
yes.
around 1000 BC.
I mean, you tell me what else people are gonna do better with their time at that point.
Survive, hunt,
Well, that's a given. Gotta have some
build
entertainment.
homes, try not to get eaten by lions.
Boring.
Uh,
You dodge.
Zed, you want to help me out here?
No.
Look, it's like 100 BC before the Lion King would take off. So I mean, they had to do something else to entertain themselves.
Uh, moving on. Moving on to our next dragon. Now, this is actually one of the most famous, and more than likely, probably nobody's ever heard of the other ones, with the exception to the Rainbow Serpent. Everyone, while maybe not hearing the name, at least knows what it is. It's the Ouroboros. Ouroboros. Which
Ouroboros.
It's Ouroboros.
Ouroboros,
Yeah.
which is essentially the snake eating its own tail, which has become a symbol of immortality and, well, time in general. And this, for those of you listening on Spotify, Shadow R Fox just placed a picture inside the Borealis of apparently a character from Loki who was named Ouroboros as well, huh? Is that correct?
Yeah, his name is Ouroboros, but they call him OB for short. And they directly talk about the snake eating its tail when they reference him.
That makes sense.
Like, he's literally supposed to be a joke on the Ouroboros itself.
Very good. Now, this image goes back to at least, it's probably older, but the earliest carved image we have of this, which it's nice that someone in Africa finally actually put down one of these dragons on an image we could see, goes back to about 1400 BC, where it was discovered on the wall of the tomb of King Tutankhamun, better known as King Tut. Now, the wall depiction had two orbuses around Osiris, one at his head and one at his feet. And this was actually the earliest image we have of, this particular depiction. Now, why is that? Well, Tutankhamun, you have to remember, King Tut, was actually kind of trying to get Egypt back into place because what is that?
I had to throw in a Pokemon for this theme.
Oh yes, thank you for Cothagurgus.
What?
Yeah, there's a Pokemon.
Yes, there is a Pokemon that is just a coffin.
Okay, what the heck is going on with Pokemon?
Yeah.
Like, there's a coffin Pokemon?
Yep.
Yes.
I mean, was it bad enough with the ghost Pokemon they had to add in a mummy one?
Yep.
It is Ghost.
Of course it is. Where was I going with this? Okay, so the son of Tutankhamun, or King Tut, who, despite his very pretty golden bust, which makes him look absolutely perfect, he did not look anything like that bust. From the depictions that we have, Tutankhamun was, what's a polite way to say this?
Inbred.
I was going to say homely, but your word works too. But it does make sense that he would be the one to first put an image like this on the tomb, as he was the son of a very radical king, as his father was Akhenaten. Akhenaten was said to be one of the most radical kings or pharaohs that they had. First of all, he didn't fit with the whole make everything perfect and smooth. The statues of him are very distinctive. Like, when you're staring at him. He's a very odd-looking fellow. He's not muscularly perfect. He's, well, inbred, I guess would be a good way of putting it. And he is known as one of the more radical pharaohs. In fact, so radical that after his death, many tried to destroy his image. He tried to move the Egyptian capital. He did move the Egyptian capital. He switched it over to a monotheistic religion, worshiping the sun god. And because of all his changes in time, he was considered a rather radical and even heretical. So Tutankhamun definitely has this radical portion still in him, but you can see where he kind of tried to get Egypt back on track. Now, whether or not he succeeded is not while we're. But again, from the tomb, the earliest image is about 1400 BC. So, going back farther now, we then get to Beta. Okay, and Beta is another strange dragon where the tales vary. So Beta apparently is supposed to be a protectorate, supposed to protect villages, keep them safe. And again, as the stories vary, in most of them, Beta ends up enslaving the entire village and requiring sacrifices. Sacrifices, which are usually a young maiden, mean that Beta will continue to supply crops and make the village prosperous. So often the villagers went with it because, what's a one woman a year or every compared to a prosperous village, right? And the story goes usually that Beta is then killed by a hero who falls for the woman who's supposed to be sacrificed, and then the village is basically damned because he does it, and they all turn on him. And this is common with the Sonanki people, and it dates back to a rough estimate of 2500 BC. So, any thoughts?
You don't know how hard I had to resist the urge to put a image of Michael Jackson beat it in there when you said beat it. I had to fight that, Archimage. I had to fight.
Well, I appreciate it. I do. I understand how difficult it was. I appreciate it. Your self-control has always astounded me, Fox. It really is your best quality.
You're just lucky I couldn't find any fast pictures of Michael Jackson fighting that giant snake.
I mean, there probably was in Michael Jackson's movie. What was that movie he
The
did with
space
the?
movie?
Yeah.
Oh,
What was that? You know, where it had Smooth Criminal in it, which honestly made no sense.
Captain EO.
Is that what it was?
Captain E and then O.
Whatever. Okay, so stepping away from Michael Jackson's "Beat It," as it's probably copywritten, and there's no way we can make this video without YouTube coming down on us. At this point, I want to point out that there's a noticeable progression as we go further back. As we go further back in time, the dragon goes from benevolent to malevolent. It starts to become more and more evil. It starts becoming something that is to be feared. You notice that it went from a healer to kind of back here where we're at monster again. And when we look at our final dragon, I want you to keep that in mind because this is our final dragon of Africa. Now, while scholars debate on Africa when it was inhabited and other bit, the majority of scholars agree that the oldest civilization in Africa is Egypt. And Egypt has the legend of Apep, who is the embodiment of darkness and disorder. Apep is the opponent of the god Mayat, who is the god of order and truth, another creator god. He is a giant serpent, and he's also said to encircle the earth, which sounds familiar. And he is dated back to around 3500 BC. And I imagine that there's a lot of Pokemon that can be represented by a serpent, right? Like, there's got to be quite a few.
Ekans, Sir Viper, Arbok, Rayquaza technically because it's just a giant serpent dragon.
Counting the water ones, Gyarados, Milotic.
Yes. And Apep was supposed to be the embodiment of disorder and the embodiment of the sea, which was often seen as chaotic and disorderly. Which, yeah, you could see that. And so with that, that is our final African dragon. And from this, we see possibly an origin basis. Now, what I mean, it can be seen by these final dragons of the Middle East and Mesopotamia area. The next one being Tiamat. Now, Tiamat is a primordial goddess that embodies chaos. It's thought to be the other half of creation. It is the darkness to the light. And Tiamat has a very interesting story where she is a monstrous serpent, and basically she does not start out as evil, but she becomes evil and the adversary when her husband is killed. And she then goes into a rage and starts to fight against her own children. And ultimately, she fights against the storm god of Babylonia, which is where this is from, the storm god Marmaduke. And Marmaduke, being the storm god, of course. Really? You had to find the dog.
I couldn't resist that one.
For those of you who don't know, whether you're on Spotify or Marmaduke is also the name of a popular comic strip.
And cartoon series, apparently.
And also, I'm told, a very lame movie. Oop. I think. I'm glad I didn't tell you about the movie.
No, that was from the Boomerang cartoon, apparently.
There was a Boomerang cartoon?
I didn't even know it, but that screenshot had the Boomerang logo in it.
It does?
It did before I put his head on.
Well done. And again, Babylonian myth, and it dates back to around 1750 BC. So moving on from our now dog-headed god of the skies.
I mean, it makes them much sense as most gods and deities in that region. So
Okay, I have to give you that one.
yeah, throw a dog at one of the coaches, and I guarantee you're gonna find a coach with a dog head on a human's body.
Well, we're just talking about one, Egypt. They have Anubis.
Exactly. So
Yeah, you've got to. I said I'm giving you that one. So moving on from Babylon, we then go to Yam, who is part of Yam is Hittite, right?
Canaanite.
Canaanite, sorry. Yam, who is part of the Canaanite mythology or Canaanite religion, going all the way back to 500, which is something we have a little bit of knowledge of them because most of by the Israelites. So yeah, we don't have a lot on this, not even a picture, but Yam was supposed to be as well a giant serpent deity, said to be the god of the sea and the embodiment of chaos, an adversary of Balahad, the god of storms and rainfall. You're starting to see a pattern with this, which can be seen even further with the Hittite culture around 1600 BC, where we have Iluyanka, which I think that's the first one I've actually pronounced correctly, who again is a massive serpentine creature fighting a god called Tarahans, who is a weather deity and chief god. The myths vary about how exactly it goes down, but it always ends the serpent's death and being used to create the universe. So, from these stories, a bit of a pattern starts to emerge. And the further back you go, the more the dragon symbolizes chaos, disorder, evil, destruction, instead of luck. So when you start at the center at these and the oldest myths, as we've told, you see the dragon or dragon-like or serpentine-like creatures all as these embodiments of chaos, often the opposing force to a creator sky deity. Which, what does this tell us about our origin? Well, what it shows is kind of this battle of good and evil, which is not only mentioned in the myths that I've just told, but it's mentioned in Christianity, and it's even mentioned in Greece, going with Zeus versus Typhon, the great snake-like primordial Titan. Was Typhon a Titan, or was he just a monster?
no, he was the son of Gaia and oh jeez, who was the other one?
Was it Uranus or Cronus?
It was Cronus. Uranus died.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah. Okay. So he wasn't. He wasn't a Titan. He was just.
He was the offspring of one.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds right. Which technically Zeus was too. So doesn't that kind of make him a cousin?
Uh, oh, sorry. It was Gaia and Tartarus, I believe. Specifically Tartarus? So it was just a child of Tartarus itself? The location? Yeah, Gaia and Tartarus.
Oh, okay. Well, Gaia's the Earth, so I guess that
Gaia's
kind
the
of makes
Earth,
sense.
and Tartarus was either hell, and I think it also referred to another Titan or something like that. Oh, the Netherworld. The Netherworld. So I guess he was just a birth of the Netherworld. It's been a long time since I looked up the origin of Typhon.
Yeah, ditto. So, okay. So a literal hellspawn. All right, cool. Actually, that fits. Again, Zeus, a sky deity, battling a giant serpentine-like creature, which is a fascinating story depending on which one you see. Point where Zeus initially loses, and Typhon cuts out his tendons, and Zeus has to get his tendons sewn back in order to win and finish the fight. Which, yeah, okay, sure.
Walk off.
Apparently. You know, screw Achilles with his damn tendon. You know, Zeus gets him ripped out, and you know he just gets him sewn back in and walks off. I mean, Achilles,
Well, I mean,
man up, man.
if ancient Greek deity had that type of healthcare back in the past, I mean, clearly we can do that now.
Yeah, clearly. You know, we could just sew tendons back in. It can't be that
Oh,
difficult.
yeah.
And another point where this matches up, you can even see it in Norse mythology, where we have Thor versus, I can't pronounce the Midgard serpent, Shadow
Jormungandr.
Arpa. Sorry,
Jormungandr.
you are okay. Yeah, not even gonna try. Which well, everyone knows Thor from the Marvel movies now, which is not quite okay. I'm not up to date on the latest Marvel movies. He never fought the giant serpent, right?
Not in the movies. In the comics, yes.
Yeah, I figured in the comics, but never in the movies so far.
No. The Yeah, no, because the closest. Yeah, no, we didn't even get that close. The closest we came was the last Thor movie, which was Love and Thunder, where he was seeing all the gods die. And he went to one planet and saw a giant dead god. I think that was probably the closest we ever came to seeing it on screen. And that's not even the same issue, so.
There you go. So, yeah, but oh, and for those of you on YouTube, image found because Thor looks a lot closer to what he was described in Norse mythology. Thor is supposed to be a very large, burly man with a red beard and red hair. He is not supposed to be blonde. I don't really know why he's.
Surprisingly enough, God of War, the video game, got him pretty spot on with Thor.
No, it really did.
As much as people love to, one of the biggest complaint was he was too fat, and I'm like, but that's how he's described in all the stories. He's not fat, but like he's a very big, bulky,
burly guy.
Yeah, they always describe him as that.
Yeah, and that actually makes sense because remember, Vikings were warriors, warrior culture, and this is probably going to ruin a lot of women's fantasies, but most of great warriors, especially back then, were not chiseled like Russell Crowe. Most of them were pretty fat. A lot of them had a layer of fat on them, and the reason for that was it served as almost a secondary armor. Because if you're slender, while you can be fast, you can be strong, the fact is, if you're slender, you get cut by a sword in the stomach, you're pretty much screwed because that's going into your intestines and other nice vitals. If you have a layer of fat on you, while the cut hurts, it's just cutting into fat. You have a much better chance of surviving with that layer of fat on you. It's actually the same with the Roman gladiators, and we know that for a fact based on their dietary substances and other records that show what Roman gladiators. So, sorry to all of you out there, most of you who had visions of Thor. Yeah, he was a pretty big guy, and that layer of fat would actually protected him in battle.
It actually do serve that. I to add on to how well they did in God of War when Kratos swing his axe and hit Thor straight in the stomach. He's walking around the rest of that video game with a giant wound in his stomach, and he just doesn't even feel it.
Yeah, which is not uncommon with gladiators and actual warriors. Again, the layer of fat actually protects you. So, sorry to all of those out there with the fantasy, but if you want the actual warrior, this one is exceedingly closer to an actual Viking warrior probably would have looked like.
That's actually
bulkier guys do better.
You can see the axe wound.
Yeah. Like, that's the thing. When it comes to combat, if you have a layer of fat on you, you actually got a better chance. Now, to be fair, this is strictly blade combat. Guns are a different story.
Yeah, guns.
I need to make that clear.
You have everyone in America who's mildly obese going, I got this. Move aside. Move aside, mass shooter. I'm here now.
Yeah, your layer of fat will not protect you against the bullet.
Well, very, 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 very weak count. I'm talking like almost Derringer levels. You may actually survive those easily enough and not even realize you've been shot.
Yes. a Derringer, you have a chance. But if it's anything higher, probably not.
Yeah, like
Like you're gonna feel it.
very weak, low caliber guns. Maybe if you're far enough away and the angle is just right and the wind is just good and the stars align, you can
Okay,
get
but
away with it.
yeah, bottom line, don't trust your body fat against guns. Guns are probably gonna win.
We got so many obese people going out trying to fight people with knives. You can't hurt me.
Yes.
Running in, just see a bunch of naked fat guys running through the street. You can't touch this.
Oh god, that would be hilarious. It'd be horrible. The aftermath, hilarious in this.
I want to see an army of essentially fat Batmans.
We just started something and ruined so many ways. Well, it's not the first time I've done that. So, what does this all represent? To me, what this kind of shows is almost a center point migrational pattern of humanity. Because, like I said, the earliest dragons we have in history, or the earliest serpentine deities or dragon-esque creatures we have in history, are the ones from the Middle East, Mesopotamia that I just mentioned. And as you can all see, what are they? They're symbols of chaos. They're adversaries to a creator or sky deity. So, what does that tell you? That perhaps all of these people are describing some similar event, or perhaps are based off one singular mythology? Who knows? And it's interesting as we see, as they spread out more and more, we see them divert from the original evil, chaotic personification to more symbols of power and luck as the dragons remain powerful and people later wanted a powerful symbol to represent themselves or something in particular, which is where we get China, Japan, and even South America and North America, and even as we saw, the lower parts of Africa. So perhaps this is a sign of human origin. Perhaps this just shows migrational patterns of a single myth. Perhaps it means nothing at all and there's no connection whatsoever. I mean, who knows? But if it is, it would describe it, because if you started out with a mythos of an evil beast and then slowly spread out more and more, came in contact with various animals such as some of the vipers, some of the strange mammals, and other things that we've seen in the last 4 episodes of this particular section, we could see how they would slowly start to change based on environment and culture, and even how dinosaur bones could have affected and changed the mythos and turning them into the variations of modern dragons that we have today, going from evil in Europe, which is closer to the source, to the various lucky versions going to the east and farther out to the south and even the west. That's my interpretation. What do you guys think?
I like to think that they're actually all just a bunch of dragons, and we're too freaking close-minded to realize it, and they're just a bunch of like, oh yeah, there was a giant serpent, we just never looked over there. Like, oh, there's the bone. I'm gonna laugh one day we just dig up and we realize like, holy shit, they was right. There's the bones.
So you're imagining a Danny Rand thing where we find a giant dragon skeleton.
I mean, that would shock so many people if just one day when they're digging around, we just find a giant serpent, a giant skeleton of a giant snake in Africa, and we're like, holy shit, a giant snake in an area where there used to be a large river. They was telling the truth. It was legitimately. Okay, we were wrong. You were right to sacrifice people to the giant snake. You were right to go sing to the snake for his herbs. Apparently, we was wrong.
I mean, look, if that does happen, I'll be the first to come on here and apologize myself. Not even gonna
We
lie. I
we
will come
we
out and
find
be.
in Mexico a giant serpent and a bunch of feathers all over a dig site. And like, oh my god. Find out the dragon that Saint George took on was actually a dragon. Like, okay. It was just a really weak dragon. Okay.
Yep, I could see that.
No, but to all realism, in some ways there gotta be some basis for it because yeah, while you could say, oh, okay, they're just probably elephant with their trunk maybe for all the sea serpents. It's like, yeah, but I would imagine people who's been living in Africa long enough and been around enough elephants, even unless it's nighttime, you're gonna see that and be like, is that elephant?
Yeah, no, that's why I mentioned at night. And again, Africa's got some weird creatures, but yes, I do find it odd that people could honestly mistake an elephant for like, a sauropod dinosaur or even a giant elephant snake. Like, no, I do find that odd.
I would believe more that there is just a giant abnormal python or something in that area before I would believe that yeah people were just gullible enough to think it was they saw an elephant and thought it would because that's pretty. I mean,
No, I agree.
I get
like I said,
tribal society and you can argue primitive and superstitious, but even so, most tribal societies if they've been living in that region long enough, they recognize most of the animals in their habitat, especially something as large as an elephant.
no, I agree. No, I agree. Well, I said it's been an explanation that's put out there. I don't fully agree with it because I agree with you. I mean, they've been around these things. They know what they look like. I mean, if you've seen something enough, you're not going to mistake it for something else unless, I mean, maybe if you're plastered out of your mind.
But in some
I mean,
ways,
maybe, but
I do think there have to be a basis of truth behind because I find that with a lot of the mythologies, religions always seem to share similar traits when it comes to things like a snake at the beginning of creation. I
yes.
mean, just think about that. You got Christianity, all the Judeo-Islamic have a snake at the beginning of not so much beginning of creation, but early on in the Earth's history,
No,
have a
beginning of
snake.
creation. No, that's correct. That's what I was trying to say. Like Tiamat, Apep, um, all the others. No, they are that. So no,
And,
you are correct.
and even if we was to assume these was all borrowed from a original like pagan, even more pagan religion, Babylonian or what have you, as the earlier incarnation, you still would have to look at that early incarnation and go, okay, so how did they originally get the idea that there was a giant snake roaming around on Earth during this time?
Exactly.
So I think there's gotta be some truth to maybe going like back to 100 plus or even further back BC. There was maybe a dead species or extinct species of giant reptilian old snakes that maybe was on the last of its legs, last of its species dying out, that people saw and like, well, I don't know what that is, but it's a giant animal and I'm going to worship it.
Yeah, I can see that. No, I agree. Like this is all based on like that's my thing. There are too many similarities we keep seeing repeated for this all to just be a coincidence. Like there has to be some common original mythos is my point, which is the point I'm trying to make with all of the dragons. Why we went through this whole discussion, why I saved the oldest dragons for last, is to say that there's got to be a connection here. It doesn't make sense. There are too many coincidences showings for this not to have some kind of origin.
And I mean, this isn't just one. I mean, like Japan, China, Korea, um, Africa, South America, North Mexico, Central America. They all always have a serpentine dragon for theirs.
Yes.
For Europe, you can easily make the argument, okay, they dug up a lot of fossils. A lot of the fossils were mismatched. They saw maybe a fossil with wings on it and thought that was what dragons look like. You can make that, and that could be a rational argument because you don't hear too many. But even with Europe, you still hear the Normagondan, the Yomagonda, the giant world serpent of Norse. How did that end up all the way up there as a mythos that there's a snake so big it wrap around the earth?
Exactly.
So I think at one point, honestly, I don't think it's too far-fetched to believe that there was a type of giant serpent, not wrapping around the earth giant, but a large-sized serpent that would be big enough that if a human saw that, they would think, that's a god. I mean, seriously, if I'm back 1000 BC or however far back for humankind, and I saw the last of what modern day people would call a dinosaur.
Just to say, 5,000 to 6,000.
There you go. So if I was that far back and I saw what most people would call a dinosaur nowadays, roaming the earth, or a snake the size of a dinosaur roaming the earth, I would see that and go, hello, God. Would you like me to sing to you? Is that what it takes to get the magic herbs to heal my people? Okay.
Okay, you're not gonna sing to a giant snake.
If I see a giant dinosaur snake, I will do whatever it tells me to.
It will tell you to not kick going down its throat.
Okay, if that's what make the rain fall tomorrow, okay. I mean, you say that, but that's the rationality of giant snake. I feed people to it, and it start raining tomorrow.
Rationality. Okay. This is the same person who put up a picture of someone in a snake's belly that was clearly photoshopped and insisted it was.
For all I know, they saw that snake and they were like, there's God. And they were like, okay, feed it to him. And it started to rain the next day, and they're like, okay, proof positive. There's your evidence. Cause and effect. I feed people to the giant snake deity, it start raining tomorrow.
Okay, Zed, just to say, we should keep a note that if we ever do meet a giant snake, Shadow R Fox is 100% going to try to feed one of us to it.
Oh, no.
You're going first.
No. The story's always you gotta feed like children or women or something to it. So yeah, I'll get them first.
Okay, really? That's worse.
If it start raining the next day, everybody's gonna be happy at that point.
You know, this is how we got like human sacrifice. This kind of thinking.
You say that, but I mean, giant snake. I'm not gonna try to fight it. You gonna try to fight it? So watch what happens with a stick. I mean, this is before any of the bronze, so this is like Stone Age type stuff. I'm not going to take a giant dinosaur snake out with a spear and a stick with a rock on the end of it. No, but in all seriousness, that's like I would not be surprised if we found a skeleton remains of what we would call probably a snake that somehow survived the purge of most of the dinosaurs, and it was probably one like an endangered species of giant snakes that was dying out,
like a descendant of Titan Boa.
Yeah. I think that was the one we showed a couple episodes ago where it was a snake the size of like a bus and has a mouth the size of a Honda Civic.
Pretty much, yeah.
You know, yeah. If I saw something like that in the woods, and it's the only one of its kind, there's no other thing I can compare it to. All the other snakes are regular size. Well, regular-ish for that time period. And that one's literally big enough to swallow an elephant whole. I'll take a look at that and be like, okay, well, I'm worshiping that if it doesn't eat me. And that's to me, that's believable. That because we find, what was it? We've already found a fish, that Zed, you'll know this. It was that fossil fish Pokemon,
Oh, Relicanth.
Relican. It was based off of a real live fish that we thought was extinct because it was alive during, like, I think the Triassic period or something like that, and we found it living in a cave in the middle of nowhere, and it's like, oh, so and then we thought, okay, so it's in danger. This is the only one, and then we found more of them in other caves, and we are like, oh, okay, they just been living their lives in these caves this whole time. Okay. Let me see if I can find the name of that. It's from the Coelacanth, I think is where it was based. Yeah, the Coelacanth, I think is what that creature was. Yeah, Coelacanth. Am I butchering that name?
I don't know.
Coelacanth. Okay. Coelacanth. And that used to be alive as early as the Cretaceous period. At least. And we found that living in caves. And I'm like, okay, so it's feasible that somehow some of these creatures could remain somehow in some shape or form or evolutionary pattern. So I'm like, okay, maybe the ancient people did see a giant snake walking around. I'm not gonna judge. I wasn't there.
Nope. Hey, again,
The Thunderbird.
that's my point, is that there's probably an origin. Now, I think it's, me personally, I think it makes more sense that it was an original representation of evil that for some reason took on the form of a snake that has been moved about throughout the centuries and, well, actually the millennia, now that I think about it. But it's possible that some people actually saw some form of giant serpent. I mean, it's not impossible. We know Titan Boa exists, and there are plenty of creatures that we just don't know of.
Let's not forget
The thing is,
giant, what was it, giant condo or something? Where
exactly.
you look up on, I think Google, is like a guy standing next to, I think I'm more than sure that was a fake version of it because the real one was like very pixelated and I can't remember, they shot it during the Civil War time. You was telling me about
Oh yeah,
it.
that giant bird, the one that they obviously faked to make look like a pterodactyl, because the real one you can't tell what the hell.
Yeah, and the real one is literally just, you can tell it's a giant bird. You just can't tell what it is because it's a Civil War era photo and it's heavily pixelated, even though it's been enhanced.
Yeah, and it's an old Civil War photo. They weren't very clear to begin with. They claimed to be a Thunderbird. Who knows what they shot down? But they clearly shot down something. Like,
I think it was a giant condo.
It could have very well been. Like, that's the leading theory. So, but that's my whole point, is that we shouldn't simply dismiss these stories just because they sound fantastic today. We should look into this, that maybe, just maybe, our ancestors saw something. Maybe there is more to them than just a good bedtime story. That's my point. And I think it's a good point. I mean, it's literally the entire point of this entire podcast. Also to have a little bit of fun. But, yeah. Well, with that, Zed, do you have anything you want to add?
We're done. I don't have to look for any more dragons, right?
No, but what do you think as far as origin thesis on dragons?
I mean, it makes sense.
I mean, hey, since Zed is very much the most normal of all of us, I take that as a compliment.
Okay, now I'm offended. You did not just say that.
Like, that is the nicest thing I could say.
To you.
I don't know what's normal nowadays because I see some stuff people doing and I'm like, that's not normal.
Yeah, you know what? It was meant as a compliment, but now I can see how nowadays. So let me come back to you when I rework it to make it sound better.
Okay.
Because now I have to
I'll see you in 15 years when you actually figure that out.
Can we make it 50?
Yeah.
All right, awesome. I will work this out. All right. With that, thank you for joining us on this overly long journey into a look at dragons and their mythologies. Please join us next time where we will be covering a new monster, Cyclopses, right?
Yep, Cyclops.
We'll be looking at the Cyclops, an equally fascinating history, and I promise no more dragons, snakes, or, weird legends about bodily fluids.
I don't know. The Cyclops is Greek, so that's all about bodily fluid.
Okay, I can't promise the last one.
Yeah.
Thank you, and I hope you had fun.
See ya.
All right.